Good morning, good evening, welcome to week seven of Mpai 600 here at Georgetown University. What you have here is the map of the terrain walk. So if you are interested, and this is completely volunteer, we're doing it on Tuesday, August 10th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Meet here at the Ulysses S. Grant Memorial at 6:30 p.m. And what we'll do is we'll walk, we'll have a little bit of conversation there, walk over to the Peace Monument and be there by 6:45, and then we'll walk to the front on the west side of Capitol Hill, as close as we can get, and then we'll talk about what happened there. Then we'll walk this trail here and go to the east side of Capitol Hill and talk about what happened there. So 6:45 we'll meet, or 6:30 we'll meet here. 6:45 we'll be here. 7 will be here. By 7:15 we'll be here. And then I haven't decided yet, but we'll go to a place to eat afterward. I'm still trying to see. We'll wait till next week to kind of finalize that. There might be more restrictions coming down on DC, and if there are, we might have to cancel that. So. Just be advised on that. That's what we're looking at for the terrain walk. Again, it's voluntary, so it'll be here at the Ulysses S. Grant Memorial at 6:30 p.m. On the west side of Capitol Hill. So I look forward to being there. If you're going to be there, bring a charged smartphone and headphones. Reason being is because we're going to look at the video of the Capitol Hill riot as it was happening on the ground where we're at right now. If there's bad weather, we may need to cancel. If you are not vaccinated, please be masked, even if we're going to be outdoors. If there's an issue, this is my cell phone number, and I will try and provide a Zoom link if you're out of town. So if you want to tune in via Zoom from your house, you're welcome to do that as well. I just got to find a volunteer that's willing to carry around their cell phone so you can kind of see it going forward. All right, so that covers the terrain walk. If you please RSVP to the announcements at the bottom, or when you do the announcements or when you acknowledge viewing, please RSVP if you can make it, and I'll see you then. So week 7, just a couple of other announcements. 12 August, the Zoom session. That's for groups 4, 5, and 6. So group 1, 2, and 3 had a good Zoom session last week. Group 4, 5, and 6 are in the chute this week. Assignment 3 is due 15 August, Sunday 15 August. That's if you're in groups 1, 2, and 3. And the final for everyone is due 15 August as well. So a lot at the end of the semester, so I just want to make sure you're apprised of that going forward. And then please do the course evaluations. You should be getting a link to them shortly, if not already. Please do them. That's how I get feedback from the class. That's how I know what to kind of make the class better. And there's also a chance you might have me again. If you like me, you could sign up for one of my future classes. If you don't like me, don't sign up for those classes. But if you might have me again, and it always behooves you to do the course evaluation, so I'm better when I have you again down the road. So previous week, what I also want to jump back to week 5. I know we skipped a week, but just one of the conversations that came up, the gap between indicators of arrestable activity. And what I mean by that is there are plenty of people out there that do things that in hindsight you could say, oh, you should have known. Look at that guy's social media or their Facebook or the comments they made on 4chan or 8chan or what have you. But you're allowed to do all of those things and not be arrested or not be detained for mental evaluation. The problem is that gap between the two. Whether it was Nidal Hasan or the Capitol Hill rioters, there is not enough to arrest them because they are in that gap. So what do? How do we stop that from happening? One of the rules, one of the thought pieces is you try and deny them access to weapons. Increase restrictions on background checks for the very least for some of those automatic weapons, AR-15s, etc. I guess you can do that. You might have a constitutional issue. That would probably help. I can tell you what would really help that would be get you afoul of the NRA is if everyone registered when they purchased a weapon, and when that person pops hot on a no-fly list, then you can backtrack and say, wow, not only did he do whatever he did to get on the no-fly list, but he just purchased 15 AR-15s in the last year. That is an indicator. That is someone you might want to take a closer look at. So, lone wolves, the gap between indicators and arrest. You could also couch it. How do we separate the merely racist with the potentially violent racist, if you want to use the Capitol Hill analogy or Capitol Hill case study there. So that's something to think about in your future papers and future studies is how do we close that gap? But moving to week 6, CompStat. Many of you thought CompStat was the issue that brought crime down for the 90s and 2000s. If you're going to say that, you have to provide evidence of it. There's a lot of people who have, Rudy Giuliani and others who have gone around the world and said CompStat is what every country needs to adopt, or whether CompStat or criminal-based intelligence. Arguably, if it was a focusing factor for police authorities, but just like any other reports, whether you're evaluating teachers for bonuses or others, you can physically alter the reports, or you can manipulate the numbers to make sure that you look like you're on top. And that's what happened a lot with CompStat. And then factors for the decline in crime, there are other factors for decline in crime. If you're going to say CompStat is the factor, you will have to say, well, you use the decisive and decisive variables and say that CompStat was here in New York City, and it led to a decline in crime. But those same factors that were in New York City were in L.A., and there was no decline in crime. And CompStat was the decisive variable, right? But others have argued that there were a whole litany of variables that led to the decline in crime in the 90s and 2000s. Demographics, the baby boomers aged out of that prime crime years in their early 20s and late 20s. That's one factor. Other factors, abortion. This is the Levitt article that is very controversial. His argument was that the people that would be committing crimes in the 80s and 90s were aborted in the 70s after Roe v. Wade. Whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, I'll let you decide on whether that was a factor or not. Lead. We removed lead from a lot of paint, a lot of water, a lot of areas where you'd have a common issue. That has been arguably for the decline in crime. Better economy. We've had boom economies in the 80s and 90s. Mass incarceration. We've incarcerated a lot of people in the 90s, and people have said that has been a decrease in crime. The problem is we've seen these decrease in crime in other countries, in England and Germany and other industrialized countries, but they haven't had the same levels of incarceration, not even close to what the United States has had. So, that could be you have to look at it again, as I said, what's the decisive variable across multiple areas. So that kind of covered that. And then we talked about the Boston Marathon. We could also talk about, probably carry over what we saw in the Boston Marathon when we talk about CCTV specifically to the Capitol Hill riot, as we see that CCTV is being used to identify perpetrators and arrest them. Problem is twofold. One, that's great after the fact. You can arrest people. That's all good. But the second part is you only seem to have the resources to do this when it's a high-profile incident. Boston Marathon, Capitol Hill, etc. Would these technologies that you saw in that documentary, would they be applicable to low-level crime, purse snatching, and vehicular theft? So that is the question going forward. Great to have it on these one-off crimes, but will they lead to the normal steady state or have an impact on the normal steady state crime? And I can tell you that many cities, London, Paris, have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on some of these technologies, to include CCTV, with that hope. And whether that is effective or not is still, the jury's still out. So we're going to shift to business intelligence. I know the vast majority of people usually are on the law enforcement or national security intelligence, but I think you should have exposure to business intelligence. I think you should take some of the courses that are offered that cover business intelligence for the very understanding to at least get your mind around these problems in the private sector and understand what the variables for success and failure are. What you're going to see is the Dr. Gilad interview. I talked to him for about 30 minutes, and you'll see that. And the one question to ask is businesses that operate in the same space. What are the variables for success? Best Buy is still around. Circuit City is not. For those of you who remember Circuit City, Best Buy made certain adaptations. Both had to face Amazon, both had to face e-commerce, but one survived, one didn't. Why? Barnes & Noble survived. Borders did not. If you're here in the D.C. area, CVS is the dominant player in drugstores. Rite Aid is not. Why is CVS successful? So that's what I want you to think about going forward in this week. And then you can always link it back to the national security issues, which you'll see in this week's readings. So if there's questions or issues, let me know. And if you can make it on the 10th, I look forward to seeing you there.